Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Anne Marie Varga, Communications Manager for Orange County Government. Thank you for joining us here today. First, I'd like to recognize and thank our elected officials who have joined us here this afternoon. Mayor Teresa Jacobs, Judge Alice Blackwell, 9th Judicial Circuit, and State Attorney Jeff Ashton, 9th Judicial Circuit. For those members of the viewing audience, the Orange County Domestic Violence Commission was reconvened in 2013 and produced more than 60 recommendations for improvements to services for Orange County families impacted by domestic violence. This year, the Commission helped spearhead new critical domestic violence legislation. This afternoon, new research will be shared. Following remarks from Judge Blackwell and Dick Batchelor, who serve as co-chairs of the Mayor's Domestic Violence Commission, you will hear from Bill Diudo, Regional Director of the Department of Children and Family, and Marie Martinez, Operations Manager for the Howard Phillips Center for Children and Family. Mayor Jacobs will then provide her remarks, and we will open the floor to questions from the media. Judge Blackwell?
There's a natural link between domestic violence and child abuse, unfortunately, because domestic violence often includes child abuse. As a judge, I saw this in domestic violence court all too often. Children may be victimized or threatened as a way of punishing and controlling the adult victim of domestic violence. Because a domestic violence perpetrator wants to control his or her intimate partner, the perpetrator will threaten to hurt or actually hurt the partner's child in order to control their partner. Children may be injured unintentionally when acts of violence occur in their presence, such as when things are thrown or broken. Often episodes of domestic violence expand to include attacks on children. This is especially likely when an older child or teenager tries to intervene in acts of violence against their parent. What we do know is that even if children are only witnesses to acts of violence and not the intended targets, they can be harmed psychologically and emotionally. Since domestic violence is a pattern of behavior, not just a single event, episodes may become more severe and more frequent over time, resulting in an increased likelihood that children eventually become victims. Shelters report that the reason many battered women give for fleeing the home is that the perpetrators were also attacking the children. Researchers have been long aware of the link between domestic violence and child abuse. Studies show that child witnesses of domestic violence, on average, are more aggressive and fearful, and often suffer from anxiety, depression, and other trauma-related symptoms. Children who grow up in violent homes often take responsibility for the abuse, inappropriately so, and may feel guilty for not being able to stop it. They live with the constant anxiety that another beating will occur or that they will be abandoned. They may feel guilty for loving the abuser. Children are at a higher risk of alcohol or drug abuse. They experience cognitive problems or stress-related ailments like headaches, and have difficulties at school when they're exposed to domestic violence in their homes. So it's a natural outgrowth of this Commission's work to end domestic violence that we would take on the issues of child abuse. We'll look at the causes of child abuse, both in connection with domestic violence, and we will look for ways to prevent child abuse arising from domestic violence and otherwise. We expect that prevention will involve education regarding the prevalence of domestic violence and its effect on children, education directed at various segments of our community, including teachers, various service providers, and the doctors and nurses who see the end results of violence in the family. We'll seek to provide services and support to all of those who are impacted by domestic violence and child abuse, and we'll look for creative and effective ways to end the impact of family violence and abuse on vulnerable children. Dick?
Thank you, Judge Blackwell. A 58-year-old woman was arrested Wednesday after authorities found her grandchildren were sleeping on the floor with their arms chained to a washing machine with dog collars, an arrest affidavit said. A DCF investigator called Orange County Sheriff's Office after talking to one of the children about a separate sexual battery case. Another one. An Orlando mother and her boyfriend have been arrested in the death of a 1-year-old Isaiah McGee, which is now being investigated as homicide, the police announced. Isaiah was found dead in a Parkwood Inn on Colonial Drive near John Young Parkway. According to the police, the girl died of blunt force trauma. It will take up to 3 months before an autopsy can determine the death of a 3-year-old, Charlie Brom, late last month, according to the Sheriff's Department. Orlando police say the young girl was sexually abused by a 19-year-old. Doctors say her injuries seem more consistent with blunt force trauma. That's 3 cases. There have been 8 deaths since January in Orange County. 3 are being investigated as homicide, with great suspicion that a number of the others are homicide. So that's why we're going to take the Child Abuse Commission and really focus on this issue as we did with domestic violence. Something's got to happen in this community. We can't have that many children being abused. We can't have that many homicides related to children in this community. So we look forward to working on behalf of the mayor in her direction. Oh, excuse me. Bill Dialto from DCF.
Thank you, Mr. Batchelor, for your unwavering advocacy and support for children in our committee. And as mentioned, I am Bill Dialto, the Regional Managing Director for the Florida Department of Children and Families here in Central Florida. One of our most critical and important responsibilities is to investigate allegations of child abuse and neglect across the state of Florida. The statistics I'm about to share with you demonstrate just how critical the role is. As Dick just mentioned, there have been 8 child deaths in Orange County alone reported to our hotline in the first 3 months of this year. 2 of the 8 are known to be homicides. As he mentioned, the third may be classified as that in the near future. However, 50% of these child deaths are preventable. And Orange County alone ranks 2nd in the state for the highest number of child abuse cases reported to our Florida Abuse Hotline on an annual basis. In 2014, the agency investigated 13,844 cases of alleged abuse and or neglect of children in Orange County. Of the cases, the highest reported maltreatment were and consistently, number 1, family violence, or better known as domestic violence, inadequate supervision, and substance-exposed child. The long-term effects of children being exposed to physical or emotional trauma are daunting. Research suggests trauma experienced with the child's household significantly increases their risk of adversity in adulthood. These children are at greater risk of suffering from substance abuse, mental illness, medical problems, experiencing incarceration, becoming homeless, and repeating the cycle of abuse within their own children. Communities throughout neighborhoods, schools, daycare centers, churches and civic organizations can support and nurture families long before our department gets involved, making them critical to strengthening families and reinforcing healthy practices. Child Abuse Prevention Month reminds us of who and what it takes to protect children. And that is all of us working together to ensure every child is safe, loved, and has equal opportunity to be successful. Our new secretary, Mike Carroll, has in the past 6 months started a child abuse prevention campaign focused on 4 key areas that we feel and our community partners feel can help prevent deaths in the future. Quickly, those are 1, unsafe sleeping situations, drowning prevention, look before you lock. I mean, young children being left in hot cars, and we're coming into the summer months, so that's critical. And then swimming prevention and drowning prevention. 4 critical areas, and we appreciate all of our community partners who are helping with the PSAs that have been developed and being shown throughout the state of Florida on how we can prevent young children from untimely deaths. Orange County is in a fortunate position to have so many services and resources to offer families. I would like to recognize the Community-Based Care Central Florida and their CEO, Glenn Castle, who is with us here, for their innovative, important work they do every day to assist families in the greater Orlando area. Oftentimes, families simply do not know where to turn for help in times of crisis, and CBC of Central Florida is there to connect them with these critical services. The Howard Phillips Center for Children and Families is an invaluable resource and perfect example of this community's efforts to provide prevention services to families in need before child abuse occurs and treatment in the unfortunate cases when children are physically and emotionally injured. I'm honored today to introduce to you Marie Martinez, who serves as the operations manager for the Howard Phillips Center for the Children and Families. She is a great friend and partner of DCF, and I have much gratitude and appreciation for all they do. Marie.
Thank you, Mr. Dialto. Each time we hear about another senseless child abuse and neglect tragedy, it shakes us all to our very core as we ask ourselves how. How can something like this still occur in our society today to our youngest and most vulnerable community members, our children? Mr. Diayudo just outlined the compelling data that illustrates why this issue warrants our attention in Orange County. However, there's also some very good news in the field of child welfare services to report today. This news doesn't usually make the headlines, but it should. The Healthy Families programs throughout the state of Florida have attained a success rate in preventing child abuse before it starts that is truly phenomenal and worth heralding. This evidence-based program has prevented child abuse in 98% of the families served across Florida, including in Orange County, for the last 5 years. Let me repeat that. This evidence-based home visiting program broke the cycle of child abuse in 98% of the families served for the last 5 years across nearly all 67 Florida counties. Furthermore, as Bill mentioned, DCF announced 2 years ago that even 3 years after Healthy Families cases were closed, 95% of families were still abuse-free. This proven program moves the needle on child abuse prevention in a powerful way and is helping break the cycle of abuse in the families served. It is a part of the Howard Phillips Center for Children and Families locally, and 600 families in Orange County were served last year. Other good news for local child abuse cases, the Children's Advocacy Center and Child Protection Team work hand in glove with DCF, Orange County Sheriff's Office, Orlando Police Department, other law enforcement municipalities, the State Attorney's Office, CBC of Central Florida, and others to support and serve children who are reported for abuse. Assessment, advocacy, and treatment services are provided at one centrally located place that is designed to be kid-friendly and safe. These dedicated professionals work collaboratively to protect and treat local abused and neglected children every day. It is also important to acknowledge the groundbreaking work that Bill mentioned earlier that DCF is doing through their public awareness campaign on preventable deaths. DCF Secretary Mike Carroll has led the way in this campaign, and this is another example of something we should be applauding in the month of April and Child Abuse Prevention Month. Neglect is one of the leading causes of death, as Bill mentioned, and these are preventable deaths. This campaign will help raise awareness and move the needle on those deaths. Lastly, there are pinwheel gardens planted around town as part of an effort to paint Orlando blue to symbolize Child Abuse Prevention Month. Thank you for allowing us to highlight some of the child abuse prevention success stories in our community today. The Howard Phillips Center looks forward to continuing to serve and protect Orange County's at-risk children in partnership with other agencies in any way Mayor Jacobs deems appropriate. Thank you.
Thank you, Marie. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Judge Blackwell, Dick, Bill, thank you for your efforts already in helping to protect and defend those youngest citizens in our community. You know, when I think about this wonderful place that we live in, and the fact that later on this week, I see Georgia Gill over here with Visit Orlando. Later on this week, we are going to be announcing record-breaking, once again, national record-breaking tourism numbers. We have the highest job growth rate in the nation in 2014. We have the second largest university. We are a community of tremendous opportunity. And yet, we hear these statistics as well. We have a very high homeless rate. We have a very high domestic violence rate. We have lost 8 children this year to what is believed to likely be murder. How can these two things coexist? How can such great opportunity coexist with people in our community, especially our youngest, so in need of our help? We're all here today to make sure that they don't continue to coexist. We know we can do it, as Marie pointed out. We have. We've done it before. We've taken tremendous strides on this issue alone. When I look back just over my lifetime, and Dick, I know you will relate because of your efforts in this regard, drunk driving used to be kind of just a common thing. I hate to say it, but when I was a teenager, I didn't even think it wasn't criminal. It was commonplace. And now we understand how very dangerous drunk driving is. We have turned the corner on so many important social issues. But until we truly are a community where every child born here has the opportunity to be whatever they imagine, till we reach that goal, we're not finished. We like to think that we are a country where, regardless of where you were born, what your ethnicity, what your economic situation, that we all have the same opportunities. But the reality is, that's still a dream. And it will continue to be a dream until every citizen becomes a part of making that dream a reality. So we're here today to change and expand the scope of our Domestic Violence Commission. We could create a new commission, but quite frankly, the experts that we've convened would be on both commissions. Not just because domestic violence and child abuse are so intertwined, but because the people that have the expertise to help us tackle these challenges are one and the same. So Judge Blackwell, Dick Batchelor, I appreciate enormously the fact that you are not only willing, but begging to have the opportunity to expand the scope of the Domestic Violence Commission, which will henceforth be named the Domestic Violence and Child Abuse Commission. But I am also, and we are about to announce this in our chambers, I am also calling on every citizen in Orange County to roll up their sleeves, whether that means getting involved through your church, through your school, through numerous organizations that make it their mission to look out for our children and families. And in addition to what the Secretary has called on, I would ask every citizen to remember, if you see it, you have an obligation to report it. I grew up in a time where child abuse was somebody else's business. It was a family matter. You didn't get involved. Y'all have heard me say this before. I remember it vividly. And I will tell you that that abuse hurts everyone who looks the other way. And it hurts the moral character of our children when they see their friends being abused and they tell their parents and their parents look the other way. It is not okay to look the other way. Everyone who knows of a situation, you need to come forward and talk about it, because our children need a safe place to live, not just a safe home. They need a safe community. And we here are all committed to making sure that Orange County becomes that safe haven for all of Orange County citizens. I'm pleased that we have with us our State Attorney, Jeff Ashton. I notice, sir, that you are not on the panel of speakers, but please come forward. I'm sure you have some comments you're allowed to share with us.
Oh, thanks for putting me on the spot. No, I think it's wonderful that the mayor has reached out to expand the role of the commission. The connection between child abuse and domestic violence is something that we've understood for many years. In fact, about 2 years ago, we changed our office so that we have prosecutors that do both, because there is such a connection between the two. So I applaud everybody here for expanding the role of the Domestic Violence Commission to tackle child abuse. And Charlie, that you mentioned in one of your speeches, we just indicted her murderer about a month ago. So, and I remember those photographs vividly. I don't think I'll ever forget them. But thank you very much for your work. Appreciate it.
Thank you. And now we'll open it up to questions from media. For Dick Batchelor or Judge Blackwell, our co-chairs.
Are you?
No questions? Thank you all so much for being here. Okay, I'm sorry.
How does this affect how you guys move forward? How do you tackle things differently from now on?
Dick, you want to handle that in terms of your next steps? You're in implementation right now.
Well, recall that there is a Domestic Violence Commission, and we've done a lot of work, as Judge Blackwell pointed out. We've implemented a lot of the recommendations that were made, so we've got a lot of track record on that. So now we're going to begin to really focus on child abuse. And we'll have a lot of hearings, a lot of testimony, a lot of research, but we're going to try to find ways to obviously prevent these kind of deaths. There's something we can do, as was evidenced by Marie Martinez, which you said the Howard Phillips Center. They have programs now. It might, as an example, be expanding those programs, finding additional funding for those programs. But if we can replicate what's already working, we will do that. If we need to find other things to do to recommend that will work to reduce the number of children who are abused in this community, we'll do that too.
People that are already in the system with reports of abuse, or how do you find the potential victims before they become victims?
Marie, that's a good one to do.
I believe that's part of the work of the commission. As it is currently, you have a mandated reporting law in this state. It's a statutory requirement. It's a felony to fail to report, so I think there's a good visibility and a good awareness of that law in Florida. There's lots of campaigns. The Child Abuse Prevention Month campaign, I think, also brings that to the forefront. So that usually is not a concern. Sometimes you're hearing about those cases of a child who, you know, gosh, why didn't anyone know about this child? Why was it not uncovered before? I think those are some of the things the commission will look at locally and see how we can bring greater light in that area and prevent those kind of cases from occurring in the future. Why Orange County? Why are we number 2? It's a question that we're often asked. I would say it's a large metropolitan area, and the other 2 top 3 members in the state are Miami-Dade and Tampa-Hillsborough. So it's really an artifact of being a large metropolitan area with a lot of young families. And we also have a low median wage, the lowest of the top 50 large metropolitan areas in Orlando. So that's another factor. You have the working poor and some of the stressors that those families face.
How can you measure the success? I mean, obviously, if there was never any child abuse, that would be success, but that's not realistic. How do you, over the months or years, measure that success? Because next year there's 7, is that success? I mean, how do you measure it?
I think that's a good question. I don't know if any of the other want to help tackle that one.
Well, I do. I want to point out that obviously you're right. A goal of 0 domestic violence cases or 0 child abuse cases is probably not likely to be realized. But we do know what the statistics show today. I will tell you that when you increase the awareness and when you put out a call and when people really respond, you do tend to get higher numbers initially because the reporting rate goes up. But the goal is to see the overall cases reduced. And the thing that isn't very disputable, I think, is the death rates on domestic violence and child abuse. That's just not a matter of what gets reported. When someone is killed in a domestic violence situation, those numbers are real, they're indisputable. So those will be numbers that we'll be looking at as well. One last question, and then we're going to wrap up. Yes, ma'am.
So realistically, just following up on what you just said, I mean, now that you have this commission and you're trying to make people more aware, the numbers could be worse next year before they get better.
Reporting numbers. It would not be surprising to see an increase if we have people that are aware and they haven't called in those cases. So initially, higher phone calls in doesn't necessarily mean that the situation has increased. It may mean that more light is being shed on it. So I think that that's just a reality that we all need to remember, that we're urging people to report. And while it's been a law, if there isn't a campaign and an active effort to remind people that they're their responsibility, it's not as sure that they will be reporting it. So that'll be a part of our mission. It's amazing what social campaigns can do to create awareness. We're seeing it with the homelessness crisis. I'm quite convinced we will see with this as well. And so again, I would expect that we will probably see some increased phone calls, but our goal is to see reduced actual incidents and certainly reduced cases of abuse. Thank you. All right, Marie, Anne-Marie.
Thank you very much for joining us here today. We're officially closing the broadcast of this news conference. Thank you.